Welcome to the Crazy Wisdom Podcast. My guest today is Achref Trabelsi. He is an AI engineer at Neuroflash, and he's also from Tunisia. And we're going to talk about Carthage, or as he mentioned before we started recording Carthago. But that's not what we're going to limit this podcast to. We're also going to talk about probably mostly machine learning and your work in machine learning. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to meet you, Stuart, and hopefully we'll have a very fun and insightful conversation.
That's what I'm here for. So I'm just so curious because I did an interview with a Swedish guy last Friday, and he gave me a download on Swedish history. And it's like Tunisia, my uncle is actually from Tunisia. I have some family relationships from Tunisia, and it's such an interesting place because it's got a long history with the Roman Empire, but then the Arabic thing happened as well. Can you give like a 2-minute brief description of your insights into Tunisian history?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, Tunisia was way before the Phoenician came to Tunisian shores and built Carthage. There were people living there you can call them as Amazigh. And then
you said Amazigh?
Amazigh.
Amazigh.
Yeah, I will be throwing a lot of pseudo-Arabic words because I don't know the correct pronunciation for them in English. So and then came the Phoenicians, which is modern day Lebanon, and there are many stories that not exactly historically backed about their princes that built this city, and then the city grew bigger and become on its own a little empire that extended from the entire North Africa and to some places like Sicily and on the European shores also. And that's when the conflict started with the other superpower, which is the Roman Empire. And there was a lot of back and forth that could be summarized in 3 wars, the Punic Wars. And after those 3 wars, Carthage was defeated, and then what's now Tunisia fell into the Roman Empire governance. It became some sort of like what we call in the United States, or I don't remember the name, but it wasn't called Tunisia at that time. It was called Afriqiya, and which is like Little Africa. And after then it was governed until with the Roman Empire. Years come and go, and then there comes the Arabic Muslim Ghazwa or Fath, where those came from the Arabic islands to Tunisia, and they built something, a place called Kairouan, which is the first Muslim state in the North Africa. And that was like 50 after Al-Hijra, so after the Prophet migrated.
Can you say that word again? Al-Hijra?
Hijra.
Okay, Hijra. Yep.
The migration of the Prophet from Mecca to the Al-Medina. And then what happened is that the Muslim civilization or empire grew from there, and they conquered Spain, or Iberia at that time, and they called it Andalusia. And yeah, and a lot of changes happened through the different centuries, because the different leadership, let's say, that took place into the Muslim world. From first was the Umayyad, then came the Abbasid, then came the Turkish, and with each change there is changes that reflect Tunisia, and every now and then in the middle of the century there is this revolt, and then they break out of this out of the empire and create a state on their own, but then it fails, it gets conquered again, and it kept being that way until 1868, where the French Empire and colonization came. And then at that time, Tunisia still had an Ottoman or a Turkish bey, but at the same time, the everything was controlled by the French.
So the French had basically a puppet leader who was kind of like representing the Arab or was it the Ottoman leadership?
Yeah, but not they had different ones, but not all of them are puppets. Some of them were puppets. Some others revolted or stood up, and then they were punished, exiled, removed from their from their crown. And after that period, that there was a lot of civil movement in Tunisia, a lot of liberation movement. They had many leaders. The most known one is Al-Habib Bourguiba. You probably have heard of it. And then there was this the Liberation Party, and by the year 956, we got the independence, and that time entered the modern day Tunisia, where there is a huge efforts in modernizing the country with education, health, building many different cities, a bit of industry. And that continued until the late 80s. In 1987, where there was a coup d'etat, and another person came, which is name is Zine Abidine Ben Ali, he was the prime minister, interior minister at the time of the Bourguiba government. But you should know that Bourguiba it's himself not really a Democrat. He governed for like 30 years, but in the end of his government years, he became a sick old man, so he wasn't really governing, and all the other things were done by the other man that in the end did this coup and replaced him. And he spent like 23 years where Tunisia saw stability, to say, in terms of security, but also digressed it, or let's say did not advance to what it's supposed to be in the 21st century. So there was a lot of stagnation, a lot of corruption, which is why there was a revolution in 2011, which falls into the big umbrella of the Arab Spring. And then it ended with this democratic, lacking some institutions, struggling to see the light democracy this has been the case for the last 14 years.
It's so crazy how time is passing so quickly, because that Arab Spring was such an interesting time. I would be very curious to hear your take, because all I have is the mythical Western version of it. But I want to go back to the French and the relationship between Tunisia and Argentina. I'm sorry, not Argentina. Tunisia and Algeria. Well, I want to understand the identity of Tunisia as a separate country, because you mentioned there were a bunch of rulers and it kind of changed hands between different things, and then because the French, I know they colonized both Algeria and Tunisia, and were they separate states when the French, or were they separate ethnic identities by the time the French had colonized it? What is the relationship between Tunisia and Algeria?
No, all of North Africa is highly correlated. It's all the same ethnicity.
Yeah,
Uh, if yeah, Arabic, and even before, like the original people of that area, all of them are from the same ethnicity. And yeah, Tunisia and Algeria weren't the same state. The borders kept changing through different periods. But yeah, there was this different. They had different namings, as I said before. But yeah, when the French came, the French drew the border that is now modern day Tunisia and Algeria.
Why did they do that? What were the political kind of like? Why did the French benefit from having Algeria and Tunisia different?
Well, at the time they had different rulers, so you need to deal them as
Oh,
two
got it.
separate.
Yeah, got it.
It's
Okay.
two different families ruling, and yeah. Also, geographically, the Algeria is the biggest state in Africa until today, and you need if you need to do this bordering thing to be able to control security.
Yep. So interesting. Okay. Let's go back to the Arab Spring. What, in your opinion, what was the Arab Spring? What happened?
There are many stories that were told about this. I was at the time, I was like 11, so I didn't understood much then that there is something scary happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, now that I look at it, there are people that say that it was all staged from Western intelligence services. Others say that no, it was like this was planned years ahead, and I don't really believe that's the case. It could be that there are some truth to it. You never know. But what I'm gonna say that the all of those people were in need of change because due to the different economical challenges, freedom, lack of freedom, to say, in many of those countries. So change was bound to happen, whether it was staged or not. You can't keep pushing people to there and then you expect them not to react.
Yeah.
And I believe that what happened.
Interesting.
Same thing. Same thing that happened in France like 300 years ago.
Yeah.
It's people have nothing to eat. They don't have jobs, and then you have a political class that is the king is very corrupt. You revolt.
This is so interesting, and we're going to get to machine learning, and it actually kind of ties in with technology, the rise of technology, not necessarily machine learning, but probably also related to that, about the internet in the information age. And I've been going back and looking at the Soviet Union, how the Soviet Union collapsed with Mikhail Gorbachev. There was this large system, this large centralized system that they had in the Soviet Union, where they were making all the economic decisions at the top. And like that was untenable. That worked for Stalin. That worked for during World War II. It actually worked really well. and which put the United States, gave the United States its existential enemy, its first existential enemy. And so like that system though was starting to collapse in the 1980s as Mikhail Gorbachev took over. And it's really funny because there's the great Adam Curtis YouTube documentary about the collapse of the Soviet Union, and in it shows these centralized planners trying to use digital transformation. Are you familiar with the term digital transformation?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, for my listeners who don't know, it's like the term that that consultants use to try to help large companies implement the internet and implement computers, and it totally fails. The first law, the first rule of digital transformation is never mention digital transformation. And so they tried to implement this in the Soviet Union. They thought they could somehow get computers to solve all the problems that they were experiencing in the centralized state. But of course, just like today, when people try to implement technology without figuring out the human problems, it totally failed. And so as this sort of centralized, so as it relates to the Arab Spring, it's like you've got a similar type of thing. It's the centralized ruling class who had all the power, and they of course, wanted to keep the power, because anybody who gets into that position is probably motivated by power. And so but there's a certain point where the information is so free now that nobody can do it. And I love this thing you mentioned of it could be these intelligence agencies. I've had such an interesting, my grandfather, he helped the OSS, which was the group that was before the CIA that kind of solidified into the CIA. He was working for the OSS. I don't know his relationship to the CIA. I have no relationship to those organizations. I don't want one. I think they do a lot of stuff around the world that's not that great. And like that, the idea that they may have been responsible for it is interesting, because we can't know, right? Because it's hidden. It's a hidden part of the world where like people like that don't announce their existence. But they could have influenced it, or they probably very much likely influenced it. And I mean, going back to the Soviet Union, we also have the Soviet Union did the same exact thing, and Russia today probably does the same thing. I know in other parts of Africa and Chad, right now there's something going on very, very much with a lot of Russian influence in it. And so it's super interesting to think about the Arab Spring in that sense. But let's go into the internet. Actually, let's go into your personal experience of, you said you were only 11 years old at that time. I imagine you were on social media. You were connected to this world, right? Like, can you explain your earliest memories of the internet and why you got interested in technology?
Yeah, it was around that age. Yeah, you're correct. Then my first interaction was a very now when I look at it, it's a very stupid interaction, because what I wanted is to play those online games.
Video games, yeah, same as me. Yeah.
Yeah, that now you can no longer play them. But
wait, why not?
Because of they were to run on some language that is now no longer
got it.
supported by
Yeah. Same problem. I've had that problem. Yeah.
Yeah, but then with the years kept moving, then and it's an exponential growth on the different social media outlets and platforms that are being launched. And then there come the streaming, and then you have giants that are now competing with TVs and organizations that are like 50 years old. And then in 2 or 3 years, you are making the same growth as them. And yeah, with all of that, you need to be very careful on how to deal with that, especially if because you can waste your time. You can, of course, fall into this biased, misinformed type of news that you would be getting. If you saw it on a tweet, doesn't necessarily mean that it's right.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's good to read what's inside the article.
Not just the headline.
Yeah, but to bring the subject back into the AI and I believe that now we are entering this new phase of technology and how we are dealing with it. And that's what I love about my job, that it's, yeah, I chose the right moment to become to start working with AI, because now really you could see that there is a lot to do, and a lot to build.
So let's go into that. How did you get into AI? Were you a machine learning engineer before the 2022, 2023 era where ChatGPT came out? Were you doing this before, or did you enter after?
Oh, before that, I was a student in my final year as
And was that in
yeah,
Tunisia, or was that in where is that?
in Tunisia. Yeah, it
Okay.
was in Tunisia.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was studying the things that fall into the same sphere, the same topics. There was a machine learning, there was a lot of computer vision, and but when when ChatGPT came, it was so fast and so surprising that, of course, you can already have the chance to have this course, to
Yes.
study
Yeah.
generative
Yeah.
AI. Yeah,
ChatGPT, it is the course itself. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what happened then when I was looking into a place to start gaining some professional experience on this topic. That's when I landed my first job, and yeah, it's been a very fun journey, to say, because yeah, keeping up with the new models is like keeping up with the Kardashians. So
Great.
you have like every month or less a new model, and then all of the other providers or companies seems to figure out the recipe that OpenAI has, and you start having this sort of soft wars between them. Oh, I launched this week, then next week
Uh-huh.
you'll find Google. Like, what happened less than a month ago when OpenAI made the launch? The next day, there is a Google that also launched Gemini.
So I don't mean to interrupt you there. There's a great point, which I've been thinking about as well. In the Google launch, it seems like OpenAI is just listening to when Google will make their announcements, and then either the day before or the day after releasing whatever they're working on in order to steal attention away from Google. And it happened twice so far. First with the Sora. It felt like, for me, basically OpenAI just released Sora because they heard that Google was releasing something, and it didn't even release Sora. They just said, "Hey, we're working on Sora," and then they did their Twitter game where they posted the videos and such. And then the second time it happened was like 2 weeks ago, where they also seemingly didn't have a finished product. Like, it didn't feel like GPT 4.0 was a finished product. They just wanted to make sure that the Google announcement right afterwards was completely stolen the thunder. Would you agree? Or disagree?
Yeah, I think there is some sense into this. Yeah, because all of them are big companies, and they know each other. They know the
Yeah.
different teams talk.
Yeah.
They probably hang out after work together. So
Yeah.
it's definitely yeah, this definitely could be happening. Yeah, it's all of it in the end is this big media game that you need to play into.
Yeah, interesting. And that goes back to the Arab Spring thing too. Because the 2011 was only 4 years after the rise of social networks, and it was really pretty much right after social networks had become global, in the sense that anybody could join them, whereas Facebook was closed. Twitter was always open. And so it just goes back again to this velocity of information. And this is the craziest thing that I try to think about, and I still have no answers on this, which is that we're in an age of acceleration. And we've been in the age of acceleration, maybe, I mean, like, it goes back to the 1700s, 1800s, but really, it's really started getting going with the rise of the personal computer and the rise of the internet. And now, and then the rise of mobile phones, and then the rise of social networks, and then the rise of AI. And it seems like it's just like, but each step just keeps on like going forward and changes the laws that the previous step had done it. I think what happened between 2007 and 2023, 2024 was a negative. I think it was a negative for society. I think it was, but now with AI, I think we're headed for a positive to society, but with a lot of negative other effects and such. What do you think about this rise of acceleration, and how, and personally, do you feel stressed from it as a young person who's kind of grown up in these same ways? Like, I'm not necessarily very old either, but I come from I was one of the first generations to get internet, and also play video games in the computers and such. And so for me, it feels pretty stressful, these jumps in the age of acceleration. How do you feel about it?
I actually feel excited about it. So it's like I'm waiting for it. When this happened, the question first that pops to mind. Okay, first, how does it work? Can I use it? And then after that comes the question, I wonder what's coming next. So if they were able to do this, or even if they launch this, what do they have stored that they didn't launch yet? So yeah, it's a fun chain of thought that happens, and that you start imagining this. I mean, yeah, I always liked sci-fi movies, and we are not there yet, but those,
we're close.
yeah, almost. So give it a year or two, but and it will no longer be sci-fi. We'll look at it as a documentary.
yeah. The sci-fi to documentary pipeline. So what is coming next?
I believe that those models will LLM-based models like the GPTs, for example, will keep getting better, and then they'll keep trying to enhance those with other techniques like agents, like RAG, and they will try to standardize this as a way of development, or as a way to build a product if you are an entrepreneur. And you'll start seeing a lot of big companies pushing AI into their work, whether they were an AI company as a use case or not. They will find the necessity to add it just for pure optimization and productivity enhancements. And I believe that in few years, not necessarily 3 or 5, it could be more, that we will reach this general artificial intelligence that is capable of doing all the things that we envision. Other people in the AI community that are way more qualified than me, like for example, Jan LeCun, which is an icon of the AI world, doesn't believe that we are that close, and he's very critical of the hype, not the actual LM, but the hype around it, because he's saying that this is not what you think it is. It's good, but it's still not what you are expecting. And yeah, I mean, it's a different opinion. You would never know, because you need to be exposed into this internal research stuff that is happening, that you have no.
Well, so there's the internal research, but then there's the public research. What is the difference between those two things? Like, I mean, yeah, I guess imagine inside of OpenAI, inside of Google, inside of Facebook, those guys who are thinking probably take the public research and then expand on that internally as a part of the IP system.
I think one of my professors used to say that public research is always 3 years advanced compared to industry, and internal research is 3 years advanced compared to public research. So you have this, because internal public research is always limited to resources. It's mostly a university grant or this government support backed research that you can't have much of resources. While when you are working inside of one of the giants like Google or Apple or Microsoft, for example, then you have the resources to build your big clusters to train on massive amount of data for massive amount of time. That's not possible for many of the public's research labs, especially that also talent can be a problem, because talent, I mean, yeah, like the doctors and PhD level engineers that are working on those models, the good ones are very rare, and big companies are fighting over those. And there is this,
they're gonna take the job at Google or Facebook rather than take the job at a university, unless they're extremely motivated to give back or whatever.
I mean, it's you can't blame them.
No, there's no blame. Yeah, it's a lot of money. It's hard. It would be hard for me to say no to that money.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, this is really interesting. I love this public versus private, and then it seems like there's a paradox there. I just a random question. When you studied in Tunisia, did you study in Arabic, in English, or in French?
Not in Arabic. It's not in Arabic. Most of science related courses are taught in French.
Whoa.
And in universities some courses are in English, because the subject is very new and it makes sense to teach
all the resources are in English, basically.
Yes. Like basically AI, big data, cloud computing, all of those are American dominated fields. So in English would be the best way to study them.
Okay, we got to follow up on this tangent away from AI. So the university system in Tunisia, but I imagine that you're speaking with a lot of your fellow students in Arabic while you're going to school. Yeah, it's probably you go to lunch and everybody speaks in Arabic.
Everyone speaks in Arabic. It's to be more precise, it's the Tunisian dialect, but it's Arabic. Because we have like little words from French and from different other languages that are integrated into the Arab language, but it's Arabic.
And then the Tunisian dialect, how far is that from the Algerian dialect, from the Egyptian dialect, and from the Lebanese dialect?
So Tunisian are really good in speaking different dialects and languages, so we can speak. There is no certain reason for it, but mostly because of the nature of the country, that if you look at the place in the map, it's a trade center. So you have different commerce and exchange there. And in order to be able to sell your merchandise, you need to be able to master different languages. And so it could be that happened hundreds of years ago, and it's now into the genetics of Tunisia.
Because Tunisia is so geographically, it's so interesting because it's like really close to Sicily, right?
Yes.
And I imagine I learned that the Greeks would depend on the Egyptian grain because the Egyptian the winds could bring them down to Egypt. I forget what it was, but the winds could bring them down to Egypt and then back up very quickly. Something around that lines. Do you have any insight into what role Tunisia played in terms of before all this technology existed, like how they got from Tunisia to Sicily? I imagine it was probably pretty quick, right?
Yes, I don't have any particular insights from just saying that we had a good navy, good builders, so they built very nice boats
in Carthage, Carthago.
Yeah.
Oh,
Exactly.
interesting. Okay, so Carthago had a great navy. Rome didn't have the best navy compared to that, and that must have been a point of like Rome probably was like, oh man, we need to destroy these
No,
guys because yeah.
I don't know if the answer for that for sure, but I believe it's the same that happened between the British Empire and the Prussian Empire, where they
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yep.
Prussia didn't necessarily have that much of boats, but they were building very good ones, and the British couldn't keep up with that pace because they would go bankrupt. And I think that's what was in the thinking of the Roman Empire at that time. Yeah, we are far bigger of a superpower than them, but we can't let them keep growing with that into this space. So we need to
Yeah,
make a stop.
interesting. Yeah, interesting. Okay, all right, cool. So back to the university system in Tunisia. Is there a lot of what do you call it? Alliances between universities in Tunisia with universities in France, and then also like universities in Egypt? Because I imagine the universities in Egypt probably have more connections with the British university system. Is that accurate?
Yeah, in Tunisia, many universities have this, mine included, have this integration with collaborations with different universities in France, uh, also in Canada.
Oh, in Canada. Interesting. Why Canada? Because of the French as well?
Yeah, it's not necessarily language related. It's more of uh, yeah, it's this cultural
Sort of
exchange
random.
between the
It's
yeah
sort of random. Yeah.
yeah, we have like because we have a good Tunisian population in France, in Canada, uh,
Uh-huh.
so it's it's easier to interact because you'd find a contact, you'd build relationships.
Interesting. I'm just looking up the population of Tunisia right now. So there's 12 million people in Tunisia. Um, it's such an interesting dynamic, and we got university systems. I've been learning a lot about university systems and how they work down here in Argentina. In Silicon Valley and in San Francisco, there's a sort of pride complex which we didn't have before. Back in the 1980s and the 1990s, it was a bunch of geeks. It was very open. You know, if you wanted to get involved and you had some intelligence and some creativity, all you would need to do is go move there, and you would meet the people and you'd get in. And now, particularly in AI, particularly in machine learning, there is a sort of a click developing, and there have been clicks developed for previous things, you know, like and it's really hard to get in, and I hate that. I don't like it. And so this is a very it's sort of like there's a pride complex about the universities in Silicon Valley, like you know, it's Stanford and Berkeley. If you go to those two universities, then you're in. And if you go to Caltech, yeah, okay, I guess you can come. And MIT, yeah, you can come as well. But now I'm down here in Argentina in Buenos Aires, and there's a very good university here, University of Buenos Aires, and I'm learning how it works, this international system of universities, which is so interesting to me. I personally think that the university itself is going to change significantly with the rise of AI. Actually, this would be a good question for you. How do you think about the rise of or the rise of AI and how it's going to affect or change universities?
I think what needs to be happen is for the universe, for the scientific community in the universities, the professor, the people making the courses, uh, they need to embrace the change, and then they need to adapt very fast for it, because students are using it, and giving programming tasks doesn't make any sense anymore, because they just gonna solve it in 10 minutes.
Way faster than, well, actually, okay, sorry to maybe go on a bit of a tangent as well, is like, have I imagine have a lot of experience coding and programming. Have you given any of that to the AI, or are you still better than what the AI can output?
Yeah, it's hard to tell because it's not, there are different kinds of programming. So So when you are talking about programming, there is the syntax. So there is that is correct, that you write a correct program. And in that case, humans are generally bad because they forget a library, they mess up things. And this is when AI can be very helpful and very fast, because you sometimes are bored, you don't want to write this code, you already wrote it, but you don't want to think about it again. And so instead of doing this search of this project or this commit that happened, so you just ask, and then it will be the same function that you wrote. There is this type of programming, but the other side of programming is that you have the logic, what you are building in the algorithm. And so your intention behind what you really want to do with that piece of code, and that the AI is really, it's really bad at it, or at least
would you say that
cases.
Would you say that pseudocode is the same thing as that?
Yeah, you could think, because pseudocode is just it's almost a code, but it's very high level, where you just put on the steps or your intention of what you need to do in them. The AI is bad because in a sense he doesn't know the entire project that you are working on, and then even if you are a very good prompter and you write you still don't, because in your mind yourself, it's not clear. You need to write it, and oh, that's not ready, and then you try to change it. This mechanism is still far. The LLMs are behind in a way in that type of thinking. But yeah, they automate the tasks very fast. They save you a lot of time by getting you don't have to rely on your memory or spend many times searching for a project that you already did before. They are usually very good at that. They are also good at debugging code. So when you have an error, instead of searching Stack Overflow, which is the very famous platform for errors, you just put your error there, and it's very nice, and it comes with an explanation, so you really understand what went wrong there.
Okay, that's really interesting. So AI is good, but it's not, there's just so many different functions. You gave me a great idea here, which may turn into a training course. If you actually want to do the training course, it would be really fun. But essentially, I've been working on this idea of, okay, I'm a non-technical. You have this understanding that is much more focused in depth on what code can do, what code can't do. When I code, I can't code. So it just makes so much sense to get the AI to code for me. And I think that that's probably, I think people probably 10 years younger than you are probably going to end up in the same boat, where unless they're really, really interested in coding, they're probably just going to learn how to get AI to do the code. And so, but that doesn't really solve anything, because there's all these complexities that of just like getting that code to work, because there's all these dependencies that are just so insane to try to understand as a non-technical person. So with that, I'm also learning the concepts. So instead of learning how to code, I'm learning what is an API, what are all the different APIs, how do those all connect to each other, how to manipulate all these different concepts. And so what I got from what you just said is that it might actually be more useful for me personally, and maybe other people, to go learn pseudocode, so that I can actually just start to think about how to turn problems into pseudocode rather than learning how to code. Do you agree? Do you disagree?
Yeah, I agree with the part that learning how to code isn't enough.
Yeah.
But the best way is to have a good grasp on the fundamentals of programming, and those are data structure, problem solving, and you can start a bit there, and then you grow a bit, go in depth, and you start looking at object-oriented programming, architecture designs, databases, yeah, you try to cover design patterns. You try to cover those fundamental topics that have been here for years, and they are not going to change because that's the best way to do it. But then, because if you notice, even in job descriptions, it's never just one programming language. It's
Yeah.
either Python, C++, Java.
Yep.
That tells you that it's all of them are the same. It's
The tool
yeah.
itself, this is so interesting that it's such a powerful tool to know how to code, but the tool itself, the coding language itself is almost like not even a part of it. Once you get to a certain level, before you get to that certain level, it's actually really, really important to learn it all. What do you think?
Yeah, you need to learn one to master it really as a programming language, and then you just get by. Because and when you have a good fundamental knowledge on how an algorithm would work, on how to do this really easy problems or small problems, you would the change or learning a new programming language wouldn't be that hard. Even prompting the LLM wouldn't be that hard, given
Yeah,
that you
interesting.
already know you already know how it would look like. So you would give a good description for it. While when you are not really into that technical fundamental detail, you would just take the answer that the LLM gave you and take it for
Yeah,
its
yeah,
word.
interesting.
And
So
it might work.
yeah, it's basically we need to learn how to call BS, to call bullshit on the AI. That's basically the primary skill.
Yes, and it's just we need to understand that this LLM is trained on massive amount of data, and this data is gathered for coding. For example, it's almost gathered from public repos on GitHub, which is others people code. This code can be really good. They could have implemented all the fundamentals correctly, but it also could be very bad. And to get the answer that you would be getting is this representation of that bias that is in the data. So you could get a code, you implement it, you run it, it works, but the question then, will it work if 100 users use my API? Oh, it works. But what if I have 1 million users? Would it still work? Does it scale?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, it becomes all of those questions that there is no way that an LLM would know, because they are very task specific, that you really need an engineer or a very technical person to do it.
Our task specific. Okay, great. So we got about 10 minutes left. I want to ask you, potentially it's a personal question. We don't have to go into this if you want. I'll give you the question I want to ask, which is, I want to understand, I've been thinking a lot about spirituality, philosophy, and LLMs. It's a very interesting question because now people are talking about consciousness and whether these things are conscious. I don't personally believe that they're conscious. I could be wrong, of course. But consciousness itself brings into a question of spirituality and philosophy. And so I've been thinking a lot about the Christian perspective, because I've grown up in a Christian world. The cultural grammar that I grew up with, it was Christian. I'm not sure if I'm a Christian or not. But and I start to think about, like, what would people think about this, like what sages particularly, and actually this could just be a cultural question about, like, what is the Islamic consciousness thinking about AI, if anything.
Uh, I wouldn't have an answer for this. I'm really not qualified
It's a big
to
question. Yeah.
yeah, but here's my take on it. So it's a more of a philosophical take. So well, recently I heard, like, Elon Musk say that it's with the AI development, say that AI can replace you. Doesn't that make your life meaningless? He said something in this source, and thinking about this, that it's very industry related to think of your life as your job.
Yes.
So if you don't have this job, then you don't really have
You're
a
not
life.
who you are. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, other countries are pushing this 4-week working system. I think they are trying this in Scandinavian countries, and if COVID taught us something positive, is that time for your family, time for personal development is also important. So I don't think that the AI first, I don't think that the AI would replace the human. The human would just evolve to use it. And if that we saved a bit of time, then it's not a big problem. We will find some activities to fill it. Read more books, do train more, spend time with kids, meet
Yeah,
someone.
it's so interesting
But
how it. Yeah, go for it. Yeah, I want you to finish that thought. Yeah.
yeah, because I said that all of the activities are outdoorsy, but I know that most tech people are really indoorsy.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm an indoor person myself.
Yeah.
But I could see that this could become, because I'm thinking of all general jobs or general people that are in the working environment right now.
It's so interesting. The meaning from the job, and you're absolutely right that the tech people in the Silicon Valley thing, the first question you always get asked is, what do you do? And I don't mind it. I like talking about business. I like talking about, but I had to go through this period where I realized that a lot of my professional goals weren't actually being achieved. And I had to go into conversation where people were asking me about my professional. And so there was a big sort of thing that I had to get over there. But in general, that's definitely the way that Silicon Valley works. It's definitely the way that America, to a certain extent, works. And now I'm in Argentina, Buenos Aires, and I'll probably be here for a really long time. And it's not the first question I get asked here. People do not define their lives by their job. And so I guess Argentina is going to have a much better chance at retaining some mental health. And that's actually really interesting because both Brazil and Argentina, very similar to the United States in a lot of different ways, but also very different, particularly in relation to the social fabric. The way people relate to each other is still somewhat intact. Whereas in my home country in the United States, it's actually very challenging right now because the social fabric has been decimated. It's very, very challenging. But in Brazil and Argentina, with the rise of social media, the same effect didn't happen. It had a completely different effect in the United States than it did here. And so I imagine that Tunisia probably is closer to what happened to Brazil and Argentina, that the social fabric is in some ways much more intact. And so the meaning question is really interesting. I almost like completely disagree with everything that Elon Musk says. Like, even if the job thing turns out in that this specific job that I have, which I still can't even put into words yet, even if that goes away, there will be other ways that we do commerce. Like, I don't think the robots are going to take over the commerce, particularly in sales and the business side of things. I don't think that's going away anytime soon. I don't think the robots will be able to do that. For the last couple of minutes, what do you think?
Yeah, totally agree. Like this, because we tend to be prisoner of the moment. It's the dilemma of the contemporary area, that everything that happens, and then we are stuck to this, and we are only thinking about it now from our perspective. But we forgot that this is not the first big change, or not the biggest change that happened to the human evolution in all the
what is the biggest
centuries
change?
and thousands of years that the human existed.
What's the biggest change?
I mean, yeah, you could think of inventing writing, then inventing the printer, or then the Industrial Revolution, or then discovering nuclear physics. All of those I'll put ahead the list than AI. I mean, those made inventing electricity. I mean, yeah, right now, when those bad robots would come and to kill us, what we are going to do? We just pull the plug, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually what California recently did put in the regulation was you have to have a kill switch. I'm somewhat skeptical that is possible, but well, thank you so much for coming on the show. How can people find out more and find you maybe on LinkedIn and tune into your writings?
Yeah, like you said, follow me on LinkedIn. I'm not really that active, but yeah, I really like that podcast, and yeah, I would be active in the coming months.
Cool. So find Achref Trabelsi, ACHREF TRABELSI, and I'll also include it in the show notes. Thank you so much.
Thanks.